My name is Daniela Mercer. I am 36 years old, and 14 months ago, I walked into the company I had built from nothing. The company that had my name on the founding documents, my signature on every lease, my fingerprints on every wall, and was told by a woman in a gray blazer that I no longer worked there. The termination letter was signed by me, my own signature, on a document I had never seen, authorizing my own removal as CEO. I stood in the lobby of my own building, holding a cardboard box they had already packed for me, and I did not say a single word, because somewhere in the back of my mind, a very quiet, very cold part of me had already started to understand exactly what my sister had done. What she did not know, what none of them knew, was that the woman who had just bought my company had been my silent business partner for 3 years. 4 days after I was handed that box, I received a call from a number I recognized immediately. It was Priya Nair, the woman my sister had sold Mercer Creative to, the buyer she had found, the deal she had closed, the signature she had forged. Priya said only one sentence before I could speak. "Daniela, I know everything. Don't do anything yet. Come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring the original partnership agreement." There was one condition to everything that followed, and by the time it was over, my sister would understand what it means to sell something that was never hers to sell. Good day, dear listeners. It is so good to have you here with me today. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like this video. It truly helps more than you know. And drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels, because I believe the women who need to hear it are everywhere. Now let me take you back for years, to the morning I signed the lease on a small office above a print shop in downtown Nashville, Tennessee, and decided that I was going to build something that no one in my family believed I could. That decision changed everything. And my sister made sure it almost cost me everything too. My name is Daniela Mercer, and I grew up the older daughter in a family of 2 girls in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. My father, Robert Mercer, ran a small hardware distribution business for 30 years. He was not a wealthy man, but he was a disciplined one. The kind of man who kept every receipt, locked the door twice, and never borrowed money. He was not certain he could return before the month was out. My younger sister, Collie, was my mother's favorite, not in any quiet or subtle way, in the way that everyone at the dinner table understood without it ever needing to be said. Collie was louder, more charming, better at the performance of warmth. She organized the school fundraisers, remembered every neighbor's birthday, walked into every room and made it feel like the room had been waiting for her. My mother looked at Collie the way certain women look at a younger version of themselves that got the life they deserved. I was quieter. I read manuals. I took apart electronics as a child, not to break them, but to understand them, to see what held them together from the inside. At 13, I reorganized the entire filing system at my father's hardware shop, color-coded, cross-referenced, with a ledger I built by hand that tracked inventory against sales in a way his old system never had. My father looked at it, nodded, said it was very good, and at dinner asked Collie how the school play rehearsal was going. I don't say this to sound bitter. I say it because it is the architecture of everything that followed. When you grow up as the responsible one, the one who builds the systems, keeps the records, does the invisible work, you learn to things very early. You learn to watch carefully. And you learn that what you build will speak for you. Because you stopped expecting people to speak for you a long time ago. After university, I spent 3 years working at a mid-sized brand strategy agency in Nashville. I was not the loudest voice in the room, but I was the one who noticed that their client retention problem was not about the quality of their creative work. It was about how that work was presented, measured, and reported back to clients. They were producing excellent campaigns and losing accounts because their clients could not see the value clearly. I rebuilt their entire client reporting and analytics process in my own time over 13 weeks, using tools I taught myself during lunch breaks and on weekends. When I showed it to the agency's managing director, she looked at it for a long moment and said, "How much would it cost to build this as a standalone product?" That was the beginning of Mercer Creative. I left the agency in the spring of 4 years ago with $38,000 in personal savings, a rented office above a print shop on Charlotte Avenue, and a partnership agreement I had drafted with Priya Nair, a tech investor and former creative director I had met at a Women in Business conference in Atlanta, who had seen my analytics prototype and asked to be involved. Priya was not a dramatic person. She was precise, deeply private about her financial positions, and meticulous about the way she structured her investments. At her request, our partnership was a silent equity arrangement. Her name did not appear in any of Mercer Creative's public-facing company documents. The agreement was notarized, filed with my personal attorney, and held in escrow. On paper, Mercer Creative had one owner. In the legal architecture beneath the surface, Priya Nair held 31% of everything. I told no one, not my attorney's assistant, not my accountant, not my mother, and not Kali. The company grew faster than I had projected. In the first year, we had 8 clients, boutique brands, small creative agencies, a regional hotel chain. In the second year, 26. By the end of year 3, Mercer Creative had a team of 22 people, offices on 2 floors of a building near Germantown, a software product that had won a regional innovation award, and annual recurring revenue. That still surprises me when I say it out loud. I had built something real, something entirely my own, and Kali noticed. She had spent those same 3 years moving between marketing coordinator positions, some at decent companies, some not. She was talented in a certain specific way. She was extraordinary at presenting other people's ideas. Put her in front of a client with a deck someone else had built, and she would sell it better than the person who built it. But she had never built anything herself. She had never stayed long enough in one place to build anything. She moved the way she always had toward whatever room was brightest at the moment. When I offered her a position at Mercer Creative 18 months in, I did it because my mother asked me to. She had called on a Sunday afternoon with the tone she uses when she has already rehearsed the conversation twice. Kali is struggling, Daniela. You know how she is. She just needs someone to believe in her. You have built something so wonderful. Can't you make a little room for your sister? I hired her as head of client partnerships. The salary was generous. The role had real weight. She would manage our biggest accounts, be the face of our client relationships, have access to everything that touched our external business. I told her on her first day that the one rule I had was directness. If there was a problem, a concern, a question about the business, she came to me. That was it. That was the whole rule. She looked at me across my desk and said, Daniela, you have no idea how much this means to me. I believed her. For the first 7 months, things were genuinely fine. Kali was extraordinary with clients. She closed 3 major accounts. She brought her warmth into every room, and the team responded to her immediately. She was, in those early months, exactly what she had always promised to be, the person who made every space feel easier. But I started noticing things, small things at first. Kali began asking questions that had nothing to do with client partnerships. What does our cap table look like? Is there a buy-sell agreement between shareholders? What would the company be worth if someone wanted to acquire us in the next 12 months? I answered some and redirected others, telling myself it was smart business curiosity. She was client-facing. Understanding the company's value positioning made sense. Then I noticed she had begun taking calls from her car. I spotted it one evening when I stayed late finishing a product brief. The parking structure below our building was visible from my office window. Kali's car was still there at 7:30, engine off, and she was inside it with her phone pressed to her ear. She saw me at the window. She raised one finger. She ended the call quickly, came back upstairs, said it was a prospective client she had been chasing. Didn't want the noise of the office. Made sense. I filed it under things I would revisit and moved on. Then came the Tuesday. I was in Chicago for 2 days at an industry conference. I received a forwarded email from Mercer Creative's registered agent, a routine annual notice about company filings. Beneath the notice, attached without explanation, was a secondary document I had not requested and had never seen. A letter of intent from a company called Vantage Bridge Creative Partners, expressing preliminary interest in acquiring Mercer Creative.it was dated 8 weeks earlier. I had never heard of Vantage Bridge Creative Partners. I had never received any contact from them, and at the bottom of the letter, in the space marked company representative, was a name, Kali Mercer, head of client partnerships, Mercer Creative. I sat in my hotel room in Chicago and looked at that name on that document for a very long time. Outside the window, the lake was flat and gray. I sat very still and did not move, and let the shape of things settle into something I could see clearly. The calls in the parking structure, The questions about cap tables and acquisition timelines. The 3 months she had spent quietly pulling information about which clients were locked in long-term contracts and which were on rolling agreements. She had not been building client relationships. She had been building a data room. I did not call her. I did not send an email. I did not confront her in any form. I called my attorney, a woman named Claire Sutton, who had handled Mercer Creative's legal structure from the very beginning. Listened to everything over the phone that night without asking a single question until I finished. Then she said to things. First, don't touch anything. Don't move documents. Don't change access permissions. Don't let her know you know. Second, go through your signature files tonight. Every document executed under your digital credentials in the last 90 days. Cross-reference each one against your own authorization records. Do it yourself, from your personal device. Don't ask anyone on your team. I changed my flight and came home the next morning. I went directly from the airport to my home office and spent the better part of a day going through everything. What I found was worse than I had prepared myself for. In the 74 days between Colley's first contact with Vantage Bridge Creative Partners and the night I sat at my kitchen table in Nashville, 16 documents had been executed under my digital signature. 4 were routine of vendor renewal, 2 tax acknowledgments, a standard NDA. 12 were not. 12 documents, taken together, formed the skeleton of a complete corporate sale, a share transfer agreement, signed by me, assigning 47% of Mercer Creative's equity to a holding entity called CM Ventures LLC, a company registered in Delaware 6 months earlier. I had never heard of CM Ventures LLC. I looked it up. Its sole registered member was Colley and Mercer. An authorization letter, signed by me, granting Colley Mercer full executive authority to negotiate and execute any acquisition on behalf of Mercer Creative and its shareholders, a binding letter of intent with Vantage Bridge Creative Partners, signed by me, agreeing to a preliminary acquisition price of $3.9 million, and at the bottom, the document I had to read 4 times before I could hold its meaning steadily, a resignation letter, signed by Daniela Mercer, CEO and founder of Mercer Creative. Effective in 10 business days. My name, my signature, my company, my resignation. None of it written by me. None of it authorized by me. None of it ever shown to me. Colley had used my digital signature credentials, which she had obtained, I would later learn, by calling our IT manager on a day I was traveling and telling him I had asked her to reset my administrative password for a client portal access issue. He had done it because she was the head of client partnerships and because she asked with the specific, warm authority of someone who has never been questioned in her life. My password had been reset and she had been inside my credentials within an hour. She had used those credentials to build the entire legal framework of a sale, to transfer nearly half my company's equity into her own holding entity, to authorize herself to speak for me in a transaction I knew nothing about, and to write my resignation from the company I had built, in my own name. Dated 10 days from now, I remember sitting at my kitchen table at 2 a.m. with those 12 documents spread in front of me, and feeling something I had not expected. Not the version of shock that arrives loudly, the quiet version. The kind that comes when something you suspected is confirmed and your body says, you already knew this. You chose not to see it. My sister had not come to work for me because she believed in what I was building. She had come because she wanted what I had built, and working inside it was the fastest way to reach it. I thought about my mother's call. Can't you make a little room for your sister? And I understood that my mother had not known. That was the thing I had to hold separately from everything else. My mother believed she was asking for grace, not handing someone the keys. One more thought arrived, cold and clarifying. Colley had structured this in 12 documents, across 74 days, using stolen credentials, without triggering a single automatic alert in our system. That required knowledge of corporate transactions that Colley did not have. She had never held an executive role. She had never navigated an acquisition. She was extraordinary in a room. But this kind of architecture, Delaware holding companies, share transfer agreements, binding letters of intent. This required someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Someone had helped her build this. I sat with that thought for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and called Priya Nair. It rang twice. She answered. Priya, I said. I think my sister just sold my company. A pause. Short. Then Priya said something that made every other thought stop. Daniela, I know. I want to stop here for just a moment. If you have ever let someone into the thing you built, the business, the project, the life you constructed piece by piece with your own hands, and then discovered that they were counting your inventory the whole time they were smiling at you, then you know exactly what those two words felt like. I know, not anger, not even betrayal, exactly. Something quieter and more disorienting. The feeling of realizing that someone was looking at your life as an asset while you were living it as a relationship. I want to ask you something before we continue. Have you ever given someone in your family access to something precious? A home, a business, a bank account, your trust because someone you loved asked you to? And did it cost you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories matter to me more than you know. And if you are not subscribed yet, please do that right now. Because what Priya told me next is where this entire story turns. Stay with me. I know, Priya had said, and then she told me everything. Vantage Bridge Creative Partners had reached out to Priya Nair 6 weeks earlier. Not because they had any awareness of her connection to Mercer Creative. Priya was well known in Nashville's creative and tech investment community, and Vantage Bridge was conducting market research on boutique creative analytics companies before proceeding with what they described as a pending acquisition. They wanted her perspective on the space, standard research call, the kind investors receive regularly, except during that conversation. The Vantage Bridge partner handling the deal, a woman named Sandra Okafor, had mentioned the company by name. Mercer Creative had mentioned the contact they had been working with, Kali Mercer, head of client partnerships. Priya had said nothing about her connection to the company. She had ended the call politely, thanks Sandra, and opened the partnership agreement she and I had signed 3 years earlier. The moment she put the phone down, 31%. Silent equity partner. Notarized and filed. Legally binding. Any acquisition of Mercer Creative required Priya Nair's signature and consent. Any share transfer required her formal notification as an existing equity holder. CM Ventures LLC, acquiring 47% of Mercer Creative's equity required disclosure to all prior shareholders in their written agreement. Kali had not disclosed Priya, because Kali had no idea Priya existed. The share transfer agreement she had executed in my name, the authorization letter, the binding letter of intent. All 12 documents were built against an equity structure that was legally inaccurate. She had sold something she did not fully own to a buyer whose due diligence had not uncovered the complete ownership picture, using a signature she had stolen. Without acknowledging the existence of a prior equity partner holding nearly a third of the company, every single document was legally compromised from its foundation. The question, Priya said, is how you want to handle it. I looked at the 12 documents still spread across my kitchen table. The city outside was completely quiet. Nashville at 2 in the morning has a stillness that feels deliberate, like the city is holding its breath. I had 3 options. I could confront Kali immediately, which would give her time to move documents and build a counter-narrative. I could report the fraud to law enforcement right away, triggering a process I could not control or time. Or I could do what I had always done. Watch, document, move precisely, and build a structure that could not be shaken once it was set. I chose the third. The plan had 4 parts. First, preserve the forensic record. Claire Sutton filed an emergency request with our document management platform's host server to create a timestamp forensic archive of every document accessed, created, or modified under my credentials in the previous 90 days. The request was granted within 6 hours. The archive revealed everything: the exact timestamps of each document's creation, the IP address from which each had been accessed, the device identifier. Kali had used her company laptop, connected to Mercer Creative's office network. Her name was attached to every action in the access log. Her device, her location, her timestamps, all documented, all preserved, all unalterable. Second, establish the prior equity position. Priya's attorney sent a formal notice to Vantage Bridge Creative Partners, legal counsel advising them that Mercer Creative operated under a pre-existing equity agreement with a silent partner whose consent had not been obtained for any document in the proposed transaction. Vantage Bridge placed the acquisition immediately on hold. Sandra Okafor had 4 conversations with their legal team in 48 hours. I know this because Priya's attorney was copied on every communication. Third, secure the company itself. Claire drafted and filed an emergency injunction in Davidson County Court preventing the transfer of any Mercer Creative equity, the execution of any company documents under my name, or the dispersal of any company funds pending resolution of a fraud claim. The injunction was granted within 72 hours by a judge who reviewed the forensic access records, Priya's partnership agreement, and the 12 unauthorized documents in a single afternoon sitting. Kali knew none of this. As far as she was aware, the sale was on track. She had begun telling people. 2 members of my team separately, on different days, came to me with the same cautious, confused expression and asked if it was true the company had been sold and that I was leaving. I told both of them the same thing. Nothing has been finalized. Keep doing your work. I will have more information for everyone very soon. The 4th part of the plan was the one I had thought about the most carefully. Vantage Bridge Creative Partners was not a malicious company. They had been deceived. Sandra Okafor had conducted what she believed was a proper acquisition process with an authorized company representative. She had no knowledge that the documents were fraudulent, that the seller did not have authority, or that a silent equity partner existed who held nearly a third of the company. Her due diligence had been inadequate. A complete equity search would have surfaced Priya's position, but her intent had been legitimate. I called Sandra Okafor directly. She did not expect the call. The moment I introduced myself as Daniela Mercer, founder and CEO of Mercer Creative, and told her I had not authorized, signed, or reviewed a single document in the proposed acquisition, the silence on her end lasted 8 full seconds. Then she said, "Miss Mercer, we need to meet in person, as soon as possible." We met 3 days later. Priya attended. Claire attended. Vantage Bridge brought Sandra Okafor and their general counsel. The meeting lasted 4 hours and 10 minutes and covered every document in the transaction, every communication Sandra had received from Kali, every representation Kali had made about her authority and her role. By the end of the meeting, the following had been established and agreed. Vantage Bridge would cooperate fully with any legal proceedings. Sandra Okafor would provide a sworn affidavit detailing every communication she had received from Kali Mercer, every document Kali had represented as having been authorized by me, and every claim Kali had made about her standing to sell the company. Vantage Bridge would withdraw from the acquisition entirely, without financial penalty to Mercer Creative, because their own counsel confirmed clearly that a transaction structured on forged authorization was not a legally binding agreement. And then Sandra Okafor said something I had not anticipated. She asked if Mercer Creative would consider a real conversation, a legitimate conversation, with me at the table. Priya disclosed as equity partner, full due diligence conducted properly. No, Kali, a clean process. If I was ever open to it, I told her I would think about it. Honestly, I drove home alone that evening. Claire had texted to confirm that the Davidson County DA's office had received her formal fraud referral and assigned an investigator. The forensic archive had been transferred. A subpoena for Kali's company communications, her email, her call logs, her device records was being drafted. I stopped at a diner near Germantown. It was after 10. The place was quiet. A few people at the counter, a couple in the corner booth sharing a slice of pie. I ordered coffee and sat alone by the window and looked at the street. I had built Mercer Creative and for years, without anyone in my family believing I would, without my mother's confidence that I was capable of something this size, without Kali's support, without any of it. I had built it with $38,000, a rented desk, 13 weeks of self-taught software development, and a partnership with a woman who had believed in the product before I fully believed in myself. And my sister had looked at everything I had built and decided the most efficient path to having something real was to take what was mine. She had made one serious miscalculation. She had not looked below the surface. She had seen my name on the documents and assumed she understood the whole structure. She had not thought to ask whether anyone else's name existed somewhere underneath mine in a filing cabinet in my attorney's office. The foundation had held. She just had not known it was there. The next morning came, and the conversation I had not planned for came with it. I arrived at the office at 7:30, earlier than anyone. The Nashville morning was bright and cool, the kind of October morning that makes the city look like it has been washed clean overnight. I made coffee in the second floor kitchen. The same kitchen where Collie had once brought a birthday cake for a junior team member and made the entire office feel like family. Collie arrived at 8:15. She did not know about the injunction. She did not know about the Vantage Bridge meeting. She walked in with the posture she always wore when she believed something good was about to happen to her. Shoulders back, chin slightly lifted. The particular ease of someone who has never had to wait long for a room to rearrange itself in their favor. She passed the front desk, smiled at two team members who greeted her, and stopped when she saw me standing in the kitchen doorway with a cup of coffee. She smiled. The calibrated version. The one she kept for moments when she was not quite sure of the ground beneath her feet. Daniela, you're here early. I am, I said. Come sit with me. We sat in my office. I closed the door. I did not offer her coffee. I placed a single folder on the desk between us, and I did not open it. I said, I know about CM Ventures LLC. The smile held for almost 3 seconds. I counted. Then it shifted into something I had not seen on her face before. Not guilt. Not fear. Something more calculated than either. The expression of someone running options, assessing which story costs the least. Daniela, listen, I know about all 12 documents. I know about the signature credentials. I know about Sandra Okafor. I know about Vantage Bridge. I paused. And I know that you have been trying to sell my company for months, using my name on documents I never saw and never signed. She leaned back. Her hands went to her lap. When Collie recalibrates, she goes still. It is one of her tells. One I had known since childhood. Then the recalibration finished, and she tried the first frame. You were never going to do anything with it, she said. You built something extraordinary, and you were just going to keep running it at the same level forever. I found a buyer, Daniela. A real buyer with real money. I was going to hand you a check. I was doing you a favor. You forged my signature on 12 documents. I had access to your credentials. That is not the same thing, and you know it. She was quiet. Then she tried the version that had always worked when everything else failed. We're sisters. I looked at her across my desk. She was 33 years old. She was wearing a good blazer. She had our mother's eyes and our mother's way of making warmth feel like something she was giving you rather than something she needed from you. We are, I said. And in 4 years, I never asked you for anything. I gave you a job when Mum asked me to. I paid you a salary that had nothing to do with anything you had built, because you hadn't built anything. I gave you access to everything. And you used that access to take the one thing in my life that was entirely mine. She opened her mouth. I slid the folder across the desk. Claire Sutton filed a fraud referral with the DA's office 2 days ago. The injunction on all company transactions was granted 72 hours ago. Vantage Bridge has withdrawn from the acquisition and provided full cooperation with the investigation. Your company laptop has been flagged, and a subpoena for your communications is being processed as we speak. Collie looked at the folder. She did not touch it. The investigator meeting is next Wednesday, I said. Claire will represent me. You need your own attorney before then. The silence in that office was the longest I have ever sat through. Longer than any difficult client conversation. Longer than the afternoon I let my first agency employee go. Longer than the evening I signed the lease on the office above the print shop and wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. This silence had a specific texture. The sound of a plan collapsing, not dramatically, but all at once. The way a structure collapses when its foundation was never there. Collie stood. She picked up the folder without opening it. She walked to the door. She had her hand on the handle when she said, and this was the thing I had not expected. Not a threat, not an excuse. Something smaller and more honest than either. I thought you would never look. I said nothing. She left. I sat in my office for a long time after the door closed. I finished my coffee, which had gone cold. I looked out at the street below. The morning was continuing in its ordinary way. A delivery van, a woman with a stroller, a man on a bicycle with a coffee cup in one hand. Normal life, completely unreachable from where I was sitting. And yet there it was, 12 feet away, and continuing without any knowledge of what had just happened in my office. I opened my laptop. I got back to work. My mother called for days later. I had known she would. Collie had always used our mother as the bridge, not because our mother was complicit, but because she genuinely believed, with her whole heart, that family was something you protected at the cost of everything else, including the truth. Our mother's love was real. It was just shaped in a way that sometimes required you to absorb things that were not yours to carry. She called on a Thursday evening. Her voice had the quality it gets when she is trying to project calm while feeling the opposite. "Daniela, I need to understand what is happening between you and your sister," I told her. All of it, not the version she was hoping for, where there had been a miscommunication, where Collie had meant well but gone about it badly, where we could sit down at a Sunday table and smooth it over, because that was what our family did with difficult things. I told her the accurate version. 12 documents, forged signature, 4 months of planning, the DAR referral, the injunction. My mother was quiet for a very long time. Then she said, "She told me she was trying to help you." "Mum," I said carefully, "there is a difference between helping someone and taking from them. She executed documents in my name without my knowledge. That is not a gray area. That is a crime." Another long silence. What is going to happen to her? I told her honestly that I did not know. The DA's investigator would assess the forensic record and determine the appropriate charges. Document fraud of this scale, in a corporate transaction valued at nearly $4 million, carried real legal exposure. But I was not the one making that determination. I had reported what happened accurately and completely. The process would take it from there. My mother said, "But she's your sister, Daniela." "I know," I said. "And this is my company." Both of those things are true at the same time. She did not have an answer for that. She hung up before I could say anything more. I stood in my kitchen in the quiet of a Thursday evening and thought about our childhood, about the way our mother would smooth things over with the specific efficiency of a woman who had learned that peace in a family required strategic forgetting. About all the things I had absorbed over the years, because absorbing them was easier than the alternative. Some things cannot be absorbed. And I had spent 4 years building something that deserved better than being absorbed. 3 weeks after that morning in my office, I received an email from Collie's personal account. It was short. It read, "Daniela, my lawyer says I shouldn't be contacting you. I'm doing it anyway. I'm sorry. Not asking you to drop anything. I know you won't and I know you shouldn't. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it." See, I read it 3 times. I forwarded it to Claire as documentation. Then I closed the email, put my phone face down, and sat with the complicated, uncomfortable truth that a genuine apology and an inexcusable act can exist in the same person, and that neither cancels the other out. I did not respond. Some doors need to stay closed for a while, not because they will never open again, but because opening them too soon means pretending that what happened on the other side of them did not happen. And I was done pretending things. It is 14 months later, as I record this for you. The criminal proceedings against Colley concluded with a guilty plea to 1 count of document fraud and 1 count of unauthorized use of electronic signature credentials. She did not receive a custodial sentence. She received a suspended sentence, 2 years of supervised probation, and a court-ordered financial restitution to Mercer Creative for legal costs and investigative damages totaling $64,000. Payable in monthly installments. Claire had asked me whether I wanted to advocate for a harsher outcome. I told her I did not. Not because what Colley did was forgivable in some simple sense, but because watching my sister go to prison was never the point. The point was the record. The point was that what happened was formally documented, adjudicated, and on the permanent legal register in a way that could never be privately renegotiated over a Sunday dinner. The truth had been given its own address, and that was enough for me to move forward. Colley left Nashville. My mother told me she moved to Atlanta, that she is working again, that she is doing better. I hope that is true. I genuinely do. Not because everything has been resolved between us. I am working on that slowly and honestly, the way you work on anything real, but because the collapse of someone you grew up with does not feel like winning. It only ever feels like grief at a lower altitude. Mercer Creative is doing well. After the legal proceedings concluded, Sandra Okafor reached out again on behalf of Vantage Bridge. A proper conversation this time. Priya was at the table, fully disclosed, 31% documented and presented cleanly. Claire was present. We conducted 11 weeks of proper due diligence, a real negotiation, full transparency on both sides. The acquisition closed at $5.6 million. Priya received her 31%. I received the remainder, along with a 2-year consulting agreement to guide Vantage Bridge's integration of Mercer Creative's product into their new creative analytics division. My team stayed. My product stayed. My name stayed on the door. I used a portion of my proceeds to open a new company, smaller, earlier stage. A different problem I have been thinking about for 2 years. The office has almost no furniture. There is a whiteboard on one wall covered in things that do not yet make sense. I get in early. I make coffee. I look at the whiteboard. Priya visited last month. She sat in one of my chairs, looked at the whiteboard for a long time, and said, "How long do you think this time?" I said 3 years, maybe 4. She said, "I'll be here." Some partnerships are built correctly. They hold. My father used to say something to me when I was small that I did not understand until much later. He would say, "Daniela, the strongest part of any structure is the part nobody can see. Build that part first." He was talking about his hardware shop, about the way he ran it carefully, without needing an audience, with every receipt kept and every door locked twice. I grew up thinking he was talking about modesty, about not needing recognition. Now I understand. He was talking about foundations. The invisible things are the things that hold when everything else is being tested. The signature on the surface means nothing if the structure underneath it is solid. Collie tried to take the surface. She did not ask what was underneath it, and by the time she found out, there was nothing she could do with that information. The foundation had already held. Here is what I want to say to you directly. If you are listening to this and you are building something, a company, a career, a creative practice, a financial life, anything that has cost you real time and real sacrifice, the people who try to take what you have built are almost never strangers. They are almost always people who had access, people you invited in, people you trusted because someone you loved asked you to trust them, because it felt like the generous thing to do, because you told yourself that family means something. That does not mean you stop trusting. It means you build with invisible foundations that do not depend on anyone else's good behavior to hold. Document everything. Know your equity. Know your partners. Know exactly what is beneath the surface of everything that has your name on it. And when someone uses your name, your actual name, your actual signature, your actual identity for something you did not choose and did not authorize, you do not absorb it quietly into the family history. You put it where it belongs, on the record. Not because you want revenge, because you spent years building something real, and real things deserve to be protected. Honestly, I sat on the step outside my new office last week with a cup of coffee going cold beside me, watching the early Nashville morning begin. The street was just starting to wake up. A bakery opening to doors down. The sound of chairs being set out on a calf terrace. The first light coming gold over the rooftops. I thought about the morning for years ago when I signed the lease on the office above the print shop. $38,000. One desk. One whiteboard. A partnership agreement in my attorney's file that I had told no one about. I had built something no one in my family believed I would build, and when someone tried to take it, the foundation I had built invisibly, the document, the partner, the 31% no one knew existed, held. My sister looked at the surface of what I had built and believed she understood the whole structure. She didn't, and now I am building again, quietly, carefully, with my name on the right documents, and my foundation exactly where no one can see it. That is my story. I want to ask you one thing before you go. What would you have done sitting in that Chicago hotel room, reading your own resignation letter, a document with your name and your signature on it that you had never written, never seen, never agreed to? Would you have called your sister immediately? Would you have gone completely quiet and started building your response? Would you have walked away from all of it and let them have it? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know. I read every single comment, every single one. And your stories matter to me more than I know how to say. And if this story stayed with you today, if it reminded you that what you have built deserves to be protected, that your name is worth defending, that invisible foundations are the ones that actually hold, share it with someone who needs to hear that right now. Someone who is building something and has not yet thought about what is underneath it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story.